I'm here for a new live today. Thank you for coming here on YouTube. I'm going to connect on Instagram too, and I'm going to be on both platforms. So bear with me. I'm going to connect here. And oh, where's my microphone? It's here. How's my hair? Good. Let's go. And we're live. We're live. Hello, friends. Welcome back to this Sunday live with me. It's been, again, a few weeks, I know. Today I'm sitting on the floor because this is how I usually sit. I'm just sitting on the floor all the time. So I'm here for another hot topic. The topic of today is some topic that I feel nobody really talks about it. And I think nobody talks about it because it's so new, the concept of old school contortion and new school contortion, that it's really not something that people even think about. So I'm here to start this conversation going because everybody should know, especially those of you that are starting to train contortion as an adult. This is going to help you a lot. So let me just start by saying first, what is old school contortion and what is new school contortion? So old school contortion, I consider it to be traditional Mongolian contortion. So there are other schools like Chinese contortion, Russian contortion, but to me, Mongolian has always been the number one. Like contortion to me means Mongolian contortion. I had a Mongolian coach, and to be honest, it's just the cleanest, most beautiful stage present type of contortion you can ever watch. Like if you ever seen circus performers and you see a Mongolian, you just know. I mean, if you see a contortion and you see their style, you know, this is a Mongolian. So this is what I consider old school contortion being, traditional Mongolian. New school of contortion, I consider it to be modern Western contortion, like Western world, which is, I would say, everything that is, America, South America, Europe, like this type of new first world country contortion, right? Because Mongolia it's always been, if you look at it in terms of like first world country, they're like more a third world country. So we are a type of part of the world where we are distinguished also by being a more wealthy type of country in this side of the world. And I'm gonna dive into this shortly, so you're gonna know why I'm mentioning this. But anyway, so new school of contortion is more geared to an adult type of audience, and also is newer, of course, because it only been developed, I think, 10 years, maybe. It's very new. So there's also little, this is why I think nobody talks about it, because nobody really knows about it. It's just so new that it's still in the process of being talked about and created. So, I mean, anyway, so why do I want to make this distinction in the first place? Is that because more and more people are getting interested in contortion nowadays, there's definitely a distinction to be made in the why you would choose a more traditional approach of contortion and why you would choose a more modern approach contortion. It will really end up to be about why you're wanting to do contortion, and also, when are you starting? Are you like a kid or you're an adult? Do you want to do it as a job, as a career, or you want to do it because you love to like feel flexible, you love to feel free in your body, you love to feel control within your body, and you're just curious about how far you can take your limits within your body. So let me just give you a little bit of rundown about history. And this is going to come back to the point I was making earlier about first world country, third world countries, right? So Mongolian contortion has been around for a long, long time. Don't ask me how long, and I'm hoping that I will not make a mistake in terms of history. And I know if some Mongolians are watching me, I hope I'm going to touch those subjects correctly. But Mongolia has been around. Mongolian contortion has been around for a long time, and around 1940s is when the circus National State Circus School was created in Ulaanbaatar, capital of Mongolia, and that's where I would say contortion became a little more internationally recognized as a discipline, as a sport, as a discipline, as an art. I don't know about sport, but anyway, so it started becoming popular in 1940s, and you have to remember at the time Mongolia was under a heavy communism influence. Because of that, pretty much the government was supporting people to perform and practice contortion in terms of if you become a contortionist and you were in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, within those years, you would perform contortion to make money. Honestly, you could travel. It was very strict at the time. There was not a lot of freedom. Of course, it was communist country. You could only travel to other communist country. You were watched. You were told what you could do, what you couldn't do, and whatever you would make as in terms of money, you would have to give 95% of what you were making to the government back. So it was really like a way of working, but really you weren't really doing it for yourself. You were just trying to like you were doing it because you were supported from the government to do it. You could go to the school, you could be, supported into your training, but then you would do it for the country. So this went on for a long time, and that's why Mongolian contortion did not reach us until the 90s, because only in the 90s Mongolia it detached itself from communism, and it became a democracy, and only then Mongolia became a country where the Mongolian contortionists could actually finally travel and reach the United States and reach richer countries to travel. And at the time, they were the Ringling Brothers Circus, which is the company that my coach traveled with to the United States. And at the time, traveling to the United States was the dream. I mean, it is still today. Like if you were coming from Mongolia, first world country, very deeply poor country, there's nothing. I've been there, guys. It's a first world country still today. I went in 2017. And you really get an idea of like contortion was not a choice, it was a necessity. So at the time, you didn't have a choice really. Like if you could help your family and go abroad and make money, you would do it. You would become a contortionist just to make it in life. So at the time, the 1990s, again, the contortionist, some lucky contortionist could actually travel and go to America, travel and go to other countries, and finally, start making a living, start succeeding, start making more money. But still, the mentality of the time was like, I'm going to do contortion to send money to my country because the country was very poor. The families were struggling. They didn't have anything. So why am I making this whole story up? Like, to tell you this story. Why am I telling you this story? Because you gotta understand the mentality behind contortion. The real contortion is the whys are very different from the whys of nowadays modern contortion. So the whys of the time, it was like, I need to make money. Contortion is a mean to an end. I'm doing this to help my family, and I'm choosing this to make it in life because I have no other opportunities really. So contortion was something that you weren't choosing just because like, oh my god, today I feel like I want to be more flexible, I want to be in touch with myself, I want to feel better. No, I'm like, dude, we got no money, we're starving, we got barely hot water. I remember stories my coach would tell me about. She would have to go get water and bring it to her tent. They were living in the yurt, the tent there. So I'm like, the mentality behind the real contortion was a lot of struggle. There was a lot of, the only way out was hard work, discipline. Let's not forget contortion at the in Mongolia with, you don't got no supplements, you got no Amazon like delivering like, oh, I need a hot pad on my back, which there's no Amazon. There's no Amazon. There's no vitamins. These people are like undernourished. They got no food. They're training like motherfuckers. They're like going hard at it. They got barely like enough to survive, and still they became the highest performers in the world. So I have so much respect for the fact that these people really build themselves up from zero. So I always try to make a point, and when I'm teaching contortion, I always try to respect and have in the back of my mind the art that I was able to learn through having a Mongolian coach for my first 4 years of training. And also, when I tell you that I went to Mongolia, so when I went to Mongolia, I went, and my experience was very different from what I expected it to be. And the reason why is when I went to Mongolia, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to Mongolia. How cool. I'm going to do like the training, and it's going to be like workshops and freaking like I'm talking from my American experience where everybody's like, gathered, and you have like all the workshop and everything is like this fantasy. You're like, oh, we're doing contortion with the other contortionists from Mongolia, and everybody do it because they love it and it's a passion. And now I'm not telling you that some of them they're not passionate about, but like when I went there, I went to the Mongolian State National Circus School, and I met the coach of my coach, which I've heard stories that were like, this coach was the hardest coach ever. She was a slapper student. She would be hot. Like, remember, traditional, and we're going to talk about this too. Traditional Mongolian contortion is hardcore. Like, I'm pushing you. I don't care if you're hurting. That type of like old school method, right? And when I went there, by the way, I was just surrounded by like these tons and tons of tiny little kids, contortion kids. And I was thinking, wow, this looks like a contortionist factory. It was like tons of them. And they were just there in this big room with very little tools. There were not like yoga blocks and straps and beautiful mats and aloe yoga outfit. Forget it. They had nothing. They had a chair. There was a coach with a stick. Freaking, if you were lucky, there was a yoga block. I don't even think I've seen a yoga block actually. And they were training hard. Like when I saw that, I had a moment where I felt like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't belong. Like, I don't, what is, this is not what I thought this was. So they were training super hard, and there was this like aggressiveness behind it. And really, like, all these kids were super disciplined, super disciplined. And I remember like thinking about the kids in the US or in Italy or in Europe, and I'm like, these kids are like, they're silent, working. The coach doesn't even have to put it in place. They're like disciplined. They're trained so hard. And in my heart, I'm like, wow, they're all trying to make it in life. I'm here coming from my privileged life, travel, go to see places. And I felt such a big admiration and also about the reality that I could live within my life, that I could choose contortion as a passion instead of I have to fucking contort to live, to make it out of this fucking place. So again, this is the biggest difference coming back to what I was trying to say earlier. Training in a first world country like America, like we have everything, we have all the options, we have the beautiful gym, we can train if we want, but we don't have to, but we have this and that and the jobs. Again, I'm not saying I'm just generalizing. I know there's also hardship within the US, but you know what I mean. This is a first world country. We really don't have like starving like they are starving. Like third world countries, I mean, you see it. There's nothing there. I went there and I was there for like 10 days and I was like, I guess here you either go do contortion or you have a farm. So what I'm saying is that when you are talking about modern contortion, you're talking about from a privileged state. You're talking about I have a choice. I'm doing this for my health. I'm doing this as a passion. I'm doing this not to perform maybe, or maybe I can perform, but it's not like a necessity. So I wanted to make this point. So like, let me tell you first, who was geared toward the old school contortion? Who was geared toward? It was geared toward young kids. So forget about if you're over 20, you're done. Like what are you doing? Like literally, I remember when I went to Mongolia and I was at the state circus, national circus school, and they kind of look at me like, what are you doing? Why? Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. You're right. The fuck. So the old school contortion is geared toward kids, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, right? Number two, why was it practiced? We talked about it earlier. Mongolian contortion, the old school contortion, was practiced to become a circus performer. Period. It was not because, oh, today I want to be feeling good, I want to meditate within my body, which is all beautiful reasons to choose Mongolia, to choose contortion, by the way. But their goal was like, I want to be in the circus. I want to travel and be in the circus. That's my goal. What is, because it's still going, it's not like it's gone. What is characterized? Can I say that? I don't know. But yeah, let's go with it. Characterized by, what is characterized by? First of all, intense long hours of training. What does that mean? It means easily 6 hours a day. Like these kids, that's all they do. That's it. We're training. We're training, training, training. So definitely this type of training is a long hours of training daily. Then another thing, a lot of passive stretches. Passive stretches mean your body's taken and bent in extreme ways sometimes. Like, don't care if it hurts. These kids they're bent. I've seen them. I'm like, oh my god, like you're gonna fold in your pocket. Like this kid is gonna fold all the way. They push you. They push you. That's in the culture, is in the school of thoughts and how you get flexible, you get pushed. And then, of course, old school contortion is focused mainly on backbends and handstands, a lot of chest stands, a lot of handstands, a lot of partner um, hand balancing, like contortionist on top of contortionist on top of contortionist, like towers of contortionist. That's a very popular style of old school contortion, partner contortion, stacking each other on top of each other. So that's our point that I was going to make. So it's based also on teamwork. So there is this type of teamwork. You're training with your peers. You're creating these acts. You're building this routine with other people, right? And then beside this, because the main focus is performing, right? The whole training is based around act development. So you are training tricks that you want to perform at the end of the day, right? So it's really straight to the point. A lot of drills to really make sure you can perform the tricks that you're practicing. And also, when it comes to conditioning, I don't want to say old school contortion does not have conditioning, because it has a lot of conditioning. The only thing is the level of conditioning for old school contortion is such a high level. I'm talking about press handstand, hook up push ups. Uh, I would say the easiest conditioning drill is probably a back extension, but that's even hard for an adult. The body can barely lift their chest from the floor in a back bend extension. If you're laying on the floor and I tell you lift your chest up, you can barely lift from the floor. So I would say their conditioning, it was definitely present, but will require extremely high degree of skill already as a baseline, because it was a lot of pushing, handstanding, drills based. So I would say they have conditioning, but it's a very high level of conditioning. So there is no prehab or injury prevention or stuff like that. There's a ton of working into handstanding and backbending, not so much splits. Their focus is backbends and handstands. That's their strength. That's what they're known for. This is why they are extremely good at what they do, because that's their shit. They master that shit. So now let's get back to nowadays, right? Like, what's happening the past 10 years? And I'm not gonna lie, I might be one of the people that started this movement. How did I think about it? I'm gonna pat myself on the back. Like, good job. No, but I mean, I think I actually witnessed the transitioning of the two words. I went across of them, because I started, first of all, I started 27-year-old, consider hella old, I started with traditional Mongolia contortion, right? I met my coach, and first I was like, dude, I don't even know if I can do contortion. Like, seriously? It's crazy. She said, let's see. And just I always say this story, I always tell this story about like how my coach changed my life because by her just giving me a chance to believing in myself, this is why I'm here today. So I'm very grateful for that. And but when I started, I went to this. At the time, it was in Las Vegas. I was in Las Vegas, and I went to this. It was an ice skating center, and there was this little room where all these little ice skaters wanted to train to be more flexible for their own practice, right? And I come in, and it's like this giant, like 5'11" girl, like, hi, I want to be flexible too, and all this tiny little girl, they're all 10 years old, and like, oh my god, we can stretch together. So I really liked that time of my life where I started contortion. I was surrounded by these 10-year-olds, and I remember really liking their attitude because I would just feel like they were fearless. They had no fear. They had not yet learned fear, and everything was kind of playful for them. And I was like, wow, this must be a nice way to live. Everything's kind of fun and playful. So that's the story. I started with the traditional Mongolian contortion. My coach, though, she was very special because she had this intuition. She knew that I was like, this is not only a new market I can tap into, money wise, but this is also something that can get contortion to be practiced and recognized worldwide. And it can become a beautiful practice for everybody that wants to become more flexible, just for the hell of it, just for the health of it, just for the fun of it, just for the feeling of it. So she kind of was the first one, at least the only one I knew at the time, because I searched for forever to find someone that would take me. Because a lot of contortion coaches, if I show up, they'll be like, I'm sorry, what are you trying to do? No. I was lucky that she took me in under her guidance. And she was the first one that she said, maybe there is a market, maybe there is some people that wants to be flexible, and maybe some of them, they get to perform contortion. Some of them, they don't get to perform contortion. And even if you get to perform contortion, I would never compare myself to a Mongolian. No way. Like, I know, I always call it level A and level B performers. I don't want to like talk to myself like I'm level B, but I'm like, dude, you know what level A is. Level A is these people. This is my Mongolian book, by the way. I bought this in Mongolia, and it's the coach of my coach made it. And here, there's all the Mongolian contortionists. The most famous ones are here. So every time I'm like, I'm not like this, but I'm very happy who I became, and my practice is very satisfying to me. I'm very happy about my practice. So even my type of performing, I would never compare myself to them or even try to be like them. I'm a different type of performer. Besides, I don't perform anymore because, no, sometimes, but I like coaching. Anyway, so where am I, guys? I mean, this is gonna be a long one. Anyway, so okay. So what is making new school contortion different from old school contortion? First of all, the audience, right? We're talking about there's a higher interest now from adults, and when I'm talking about adults, I'm talking 25 and over. Could be 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. I'm talking about 50, 60, any age above 25 to me is adult. So there is a request for people that I want to be more flexible, even yoga people. There's been a lot of yoga people like lately that just like, I want to be more flexible, but yoga isn't doing it. Like, what else can I do? So the audience is different, number one. The why is different because some people, they don't want to perform. They don't want to be in the circus. Some of them want to perform, but maybe it's like, I want to be, this is my side thing. It's my side gig. Or maybe I want to learn how much I can push myself, or I want to coach, or I want to just feel better, health related reasons. I love the connection with my body in my mind when I train. So there are different reasons. Definitely, there is not the need of like this is a necessity. Everyone here has more of a choice in the Western world, new school contortion. So the only problem that I was talking earlier is that when this new type of audience came about, again, I think it started around 10 years ago, or maybe a little more. The Mongolian coaches, they were like, when an adult body will present, they were like, this person's stiff. This person's hard. What am I going to do with this person? So, again, there was not a lot of knowledge on what to do with the body in terms of when a body is stiff. A traditional coach would say, like, you're tight. I'm sorry. Like, I can help you, but I don't know about this. So there was a really like can talk. It was really like people were asking for something that would help adults' body, right? And honestly, again, at the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error. Like even with my coach, we tried a lot of shit. I was like, well, sometimes I would show up and my back was like, dude, today is like it's not happening. Okay, she would wrap my back with a scarf. Okay, try to bend like this. So we would try everything. It was actually really funny because some days it would be like, wow, like I thought I couldn't do anything today, and then we would make something happen. So one thing that I learned the most was like actually the resilience of it, like the fact that you would always come back to your practice no matter what, the fact that the body will go through a lot of fluctuation, but eventually you'll still improve. So the old body, the older body though would need a lot of other things that were lacking in the traditional approach, right? And what are those things? Um, so for sure, there was in traditional contortion, there was a lack of a thorough warm up. Like contortionists, old school contortionists, they just either naturally very flexible, so they do this and I'm ready, let's do it. I'm like, what? I need like 45 minutes to warm up. They're either naturally flexible, so the warm up time will be very quick, especially if you have to perform every day. It can really take so long to warm up. So there was there was like a request for we need to learn warm up for adult body. You gotta break it down everything to the T. The adult body is slower to learn, slower to move, more delicate, more fragile, whatever. So there was a need for more warm up and slower moving. And you'd be like, what does that mean? Slower moving mean? I'm like, the adult body gets overwhelmed really fast. Because why? We learn fear, first of all. We know fear very well, fortunately. We know fear. And then the body is very sensitive to overload, of sensory overload. If you push me in a back bend, I'm like, dude, like what? Like panic mode right away. So we had to learn with this new school contortion, there's been a different approach in terms of like going slower, thorough warm-ups, longer times to open the body, which in terms, it really limited the amount of time you could spend to skill development in terms of hardcore tricks, right? But also remember our new school contortion goals is toward more feeling good, feeling connected. Yes, I want to do some cool moves. Yes, I want to flow. Yes, I want to perform. But I'm doing it with a lot more health and longevity in mind. That when you do it as a contortionist old school, you're just pushing like crazy until your body just falls apart. At some point, over 30, technically, if you've been in the circle since you're 10 or 15, after 30, you're considered a bit lucky to still be doing it. Like, it's almost like you have a deadline on you when you push your body so hard. You remember the body keeps score. And so with the new school of contortion, actually, there is that longevity in mind. How can I care for my body? Like, how can I push my body and care for it? I really believe that the body needs to be pushed to some degree. I always make this weird metaphor about the body being like a wild horse. The body likes to be challenged, likes to run and be pushed and feel the stimulus of challenge, of hardship. The body needs that in order to improve. But there's always comes with a little risk now. So I mean, there's risk in life in everything we do. So okay, I told you, but I mean, new school contortion is more geared toward adults. Mm, We definitely have different needs and goals. This is what I said. Also, let me see. I want to make sure I say everything because I wrote a ton of things. Uh, yes. Another thing is the old school contortion. It was too passive for adult body. What does it mean is um, old school contortion is too much pushing, too much passive stretching, too much pushing, pushing, pushing. And unfortunately, on an adult body where ligaments are like tighter, everything's a little tighter, the fight or flight response is even more acute. The fear factor is really easy to trigger. There's a need for definitely push. Like you can push people. I'm not. I mean, I would still say that my coach pushed me perfectly. Like it was hard. Like there was sometimes I'm like I'm not pass out, but I never pass out. But it was like wow, this is hard. But it was so gradual, and she would follow the breathing. Okay, just breathe out, and I'd push you, and then breathe in, and then I'll push you. So there's a way to do it right. But definitely, like the adult body, it needs a lot more strengthening. And why is that? It's just because injuries are really easy when you are an adult. I'm not saying they're not possible to be when you're young, but like when you're adult, like I said, you're really fragile, sensitive, and so an adult body really needs strengthening to support the flexibility. So you need muscles that are really like receptive to movement. They can take you to the extreme range and brings you back. And even more than kids, because adult bodies they have history and they had all the injuries and they have all this baggage, if you want. This strength it just supports you. So I would not tell people that you have to do heavy weight training to be a contortionist. No, that's my choice of lifting here because I enjoy it. But I definitely say a lot that weight training, that including strength training in your training contortion, it really makes your nervous system really like used to the stimulus of contraction and releasing the muscle at the right time. You have like a better engagement of muscle fibers for whatever you do, either being a leg kick, a back bend. Like I feel like weight training has really helped my contortion in a way that my muscles are very receptive to stimulus. Like they do what I tell them to do. And because I can recruit more muscle fiber, let's say I do want to lift my leg up all the way and I can squeeze my glute all the way, my leg is up, like present. This leg is doing the thing. If you don't have that strength that you gain from stimulus from weight training, I think you're always gonna fall a little short. But again, I've seen contortionists that old school contortionists they do really well without the weight training. Again, I'm not in their body to say like how they feel or what their experience in the long run, but I always say that if you're very flexible, you'll need strength to contain your flexibility, to stabilize it. And if you're not flexible, well, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time getting flexible first, and then once you have a little more range, starts adding some strength to it, because that's how you're gonna use your flexibility long term. Okay, so also we have to remember. I'm kind of going back and forth. I also want to talk a little bit about other things that I noticed in old school contortion that were a little lacking, to be honest. And one of them was lack of knowledge in terms of anatomy, biomechanics, neuro, muscular connections, neuromuscular connection, nervous system regulation. I think all these things were kind of like intuitive to them. But remember, we're talking again a third world country where there was not access to studying the body. You were lucky if you're going to school. I mean, so I think and also contortion was passed on from generation to generation. So it was not something you would really have to understand on like a anatomy level. Like you were just, oh, they told me to do this, just do it. Don't think through it, just do it. Stop thinking, just do it. So I would say though that having a little more knowledge on kinesiology, biomechanics, anatomy. It really helps you to understand yourself in proprioception, understanding yourself in space, understanding what muscles doing what. To me, it really helped me to have a little more knowledge around those topics. And then the other thing that old school contortion was really like, I think it worked for some people, but like for me, would never work, is the aggressive type of uh, coaching. Like go hard or go, like, I mean, I go hard or I go home. But I usually, like, you know what I mean? Go hard, being pushed, being talked like shit, you suck, like you. I mean, my coach, she told me she was pretty much, I'm not saying physically abused, but well, verbally, like it was very hard. And she's still to this day very thankful for that because it made her who she is. But sometimes I feel you could have had the same results if there was a little more supportive and loving, maybe attitude toward. But remember, we're talking about the hard era. Now where everybody's in the soft era. We're talking about the hard era was like, I'll push you, you suck, you have to do better, what is this? Some people will be like, oh, this works for me. And I still to this day think some people like it. Like, I like when people are hard on me. I like to be, I always call it a tough love. I like to be hard when it's time to go hard and be like, okay, shut the fuck up and go. Like, enough of this shit. But also, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't feel this is good. Like, I gotta take a moment. Like, I mean, I like to have both, right? Like, it's a long term. I don't want to like be so aggressive on myself. I learned to respect my body, especially after all these abuse. I abused my body a long time. If you know my story, between eating disorders or going always hard with training, like I know what it means to have that negative, approach to movement and just beat yourself up. And I don't want to go there anymore. So I'm not a fan of that aggressive style. And then, like I said earlier, there was not enough. I don't think contortion in traditional contortion. There's not a lot of you know, there's not a lot of attention on strength, and unless we're talking about conditioning for extreme drills like handstand pressing, hook up, push up, crocodile to handstand, and they will repeat it. Again, I think their method is extraordinary, and I think this is why they're the best in the world. I'm not gonna lie, I think their discipline and hardcore training and like just they are the most hardworking people I ever met in terms of sports and disciplines, physical disciplines. But for what we're looking at nowadays, for what people want, the demand of nowadays in terms of contortion, it has, I don't want to say watered down, but it's like not everybody want to do that. Not everybody want to like push like this is, make it or break it type of deal. People want to learn to push hard but still have a certain level of enjoyment, like take a time off, time off, no, like a day or two off if you need to. Like, I think there's a demand for a more um, long-term approach of the discipline. Like, I want to train in my 50s, my 60s, my 70s. How can I do that? Well, you're gonna have to like train a little, not 6 hours a day. You're probably gonna have to train a little less, take more days off, do more strength and conditioning. Sure, push yourself, but you have to do very gradually. Like the body, remember ligaments. This is where it's really at. Flexibility, yes, is the muscle flexibility, but it's a lot to do with ligaments flexibility when it comes to contortion. In fact, ligaments are very strong if you stretch them very slowly and gradually, but they're very weak if you push hard. Like if you're like all the way, no, they're gonna hurt, they're gonna break. So they respond very well to like consistent and gradual lengthening. So you get a little more mobility, and that's why you get like those really cool lines and deep back bends. It's really your ligament they're like letting go a little more, but that works over time with care and you know uh, gradual good warm-ups. If you push too hard, you hurt yourself. So yeah, so I would say the approach will be different. Also, by the way, if you are interested in learning all about these things, I also teach it in my courses. Little disclaimer: I'm starting the courses next week, and while I teach technique and everything and exercise and progression, I really pour all I'm saying in my coaching. Even when I teach one-on-one programs, you really get the whole package. I'm never just gonna teach you exercise. I'm gonna teach you the whole thing, the whole philosophy behind it. So this is really something I'm passionate about. So you'll get this beautiful, you know, um, gems of knowledge I'm sharing. I always love to talk about mindset and like how to better your training, knowing your whys, knowing where your starting point is, knowing what you're working with, knowing where your weaknesses are mentally, physically. Anyway, so just to like starting to wrap it up, like I said, I always try to teach keeping in mind traditional Mongolian contortion because that's where I learned my foundation. And to be honest, I would have never had the result that I have today if I haven't started with Mongolian contortion. I think it gave me that hardcore foundations of like, first of all, discipline. Like I learned to be hella disciplined with contortion. And I realized that this is a commitment for life, maybe, but and patient. So discipline, patient, and also trust. Like trust in the practice, as in no matter where you are, if you're starting young, if you're starting old, if you had injury in the past, you have to trust your practice. Like if you're doing it the right way, you're listening to your body, if you're staying consistent, if you have a good routine weekly, if you warm up, if you take care of your old injuries, if you are consistent with your sleep and your nutrition, and if you're really one of the things that gives you the best results and the most gratifying, satisfying thing you can do. So, just to remind you what the new school, I know I went back and forth a lot. Guys, this was like a deep, dense topic to address, so I don't know if I did a good job. I tried. So let me just review what the new school added from the old school. The new school added, like I said earlier, extensive warm up at a slower pace. That was added from old school. It also added prehab. What's prehab? Is prevention. So instead of doing rehab, which is like recovering from injury, rehab is prevention from injury. So prehab is all those exercises that nobody wants to ever do with the bands, with the lightweight. But I'm like, you know what? Better prevention is better than cure. So prehab and conditioning, but a conditioning that it's able to be performed by beginners, like conditioning, of your shoulder, of your back, of your glutes, of your medial glutes, of your, like, a more accessible conditioning, I would say, not just for major trick development, but also for normal people that need some strengthening in certain muscles, right? And then definitely a more individualistic approach, working with each body, its proportion and needs. And what does this mean is that instead of like one fits all type of approach, you are definitely, I always say to people, you gotta learn the basics. And there's also a lot of focus on the basics in your school contortion. You need to know the basics. You need to know your foot grabs, your bridges, your cobras, your handstands, your chest stands. Like you gotta learn the foundation of these disciplines. This discipline, this art that is contortion. But then after that, you gotta kind of work with your body, not against your body. I always say work with your body, not against your body, because what does that mean is working with your body is looking at your body and be like, okay, this is not an excuse, by the way. Looking at your body and be like, okay, if I have a short legs and long torso, certain tricks that are more fitted on my body will also feel better on my body. If I have long legs and short torso, certain tricks that fit my body better will feel better. And how do you find out? Is like by doing them. When you do, I always say to people, you have to learn all the tricks. If you're into contortion, just practice and learn as much as you can, gather as much as information as you can. And then when you have that knowledge, that experience, you gotta be honest with yourself. Don't just pick what feels good because it's easy. I mean, nothing is easy in contortion, by the way. But pick something that is challenging, but it's feel like your body's like, this is hard, but we can do this. Instead of choosing something is like, damn, that looks so good on that person. But when I do it, it feels like shit no matter what. Like it feels like shit every time I do it. It's just like death. And then maybe you try next year and be like, something changed. That happened to me with freaking face frame. I hated face frame for a long time until like a few weeks ago. I did it again. I was like, this feels good now. What the fuck happened? I don't know. Just remember, the body's always changing. Even though your proportion don't change, your mobility travels. I think my mobility is always traveling a little around my body. Like I get more flexible some days on one side, or I don't know. My body is just a whole mystery. Sometimes I'm like, whatever. Let's just. So yeah, just have a more individual. New school contortion, I think, is more geared toward your needs as an individual, your wants as an individual, your proportion. We're talking about adults' bodies. So adults' bodies are all different. You're more muscular. This person's more lean. The other one's tall. That one's short. This one's naturally flexible in their back, not in their hips. This one's like. So it really takes in consideration a little more like the individual rather than just the group. And then there is definitely a little room for exploration of development of different styles. And what I mean is, with new school of contortion, there's a little more openness towards sexy, like I can perform a burlesque act with contortion in it, or like a striptease or a sexy dance, and I'll put some moves in it. It's not as strict as traditional contortion was, because remember, traditional contortion was born during, it was really like, it grew to be known during communism years. So communism, you're doing this, you're not going to be sexier, or like, you just stick to the main thing that you created, no room to going sideways somewhere. Nowadays, you can mix it, like you can make it more contemporary, you can add your own taste to it, your own flavor to it, you can do an act of and incorporate contortion in the way you want it. So I think it gives a lot more freedom to people to express themselves without staying so so tunnel vision on traditional, which is, traditional, as much as you can do all the tricks you want, it still sticks to the style of traditional. It doesn't go much further than what it is, which is amazing because it's already like extraordinary. It doesn't have to do anything else, honestly. But like nowadays, people mix styles. Mix what they already do, aerial, they do burlesque, they do striptease, they do pole, and they add their own knowledge of contortion for their art, for what they love to do. And I want to conclude this live saying that I still have so much respect and admiration for the art of traditional Mongolian contortion. And still to this day, I said this earlier, I try to teach the way I was taught with it, which is with extreme focus on details and the poses to be practiced as perfectly as possible. Because there's one thing that I would always hate to do is practice contortion in a sloppy way. It does go against what I was taught. And because I respect them so much, I respect their clean lines and beautiful style, and I don't want to like morph their own original tricks in something that it's not what it is in its original form. I try to do, when I do a zigzag, I try to do it as best as I can, because I remember my coach is like, you have to make it perfect. And then if I do a certain pose, I make sure my knees are straight, my toes are pointed as much as I can. My face is right. I always try to give it the most quality in aesthetically technically. I just want to give that as a form of respect. I don't want to like ever perform sloppily because I think it will be disrespectful to the art and to my coach. So I hope this was helpful. I know it's a lot to be talked about. I would love to do another live talking about adult contortion training and what it entails and other things like that. Today was pretty rich of concepts, so hopefully I did a good job to sum them up. Sorry if I went a little back and forth. It was hard because I'm talking about history and I'm trying to not to mess it up. And also I'm talking about something that I respect a lot. And I'm trying to address it in a way that is, respectful and correct, while also I'm adding my own experience with modern contortion coming from Europe and living in the US and having lived this past 12 years of contortion within my body and within my coaching, and really understanding and witnessing the transformation between old school and new school, and how they're both coexisting and how they're both really helping each other. Because I'm sure the traditional Mongolian contortion can learn something from the new school, and the new school will always learn from the traditional because traditional is here to stay. It never will go away. And so, yeah, guys, I hope I didn't bore you to death, but thank you for sticking around. And I'll be back with another live. If you have any question, please send it to me, DM me. If you want me to talk about a specific topic. Also, I'm going to teach next week my online courses. I closed the registration, but you can still DM me if you want to join. I have to see if I have any new spots, any spots available. And also, if you want to work with one-on-one with me, I do teach weight training and flexibility contortion as a program, like a full whole program. So you can also DM me for that. And yes, thank you so much for watching. Till the next time, guys. Thank you. Bye. Thank you for watching here too. And hopefully I'll see you next time. Ciao.